The desert had its own way of speaking. Some men heard only the whisper of wind through stone, others the rasp of sand against leather. But Dawson Hart, tall as a shadow at sundown, could hear the pause between the breaths of the land, the way it held something back before giving it away. That evening, the sky burned copper and rose, heat lifting off the ground like a ghost of the day itself. His horse moved slow, hooves pressing soft into the sand, and the canteen at his hip was nearly dry. A figure appeared in the distance, swaying under the weight of thirst. The man's skin was darkened by the sun, his hair long and bound with strips of hide. Even from a distance Dawson could see his lips cracked, his hands trembling. Without hesitation, Dawson swung down from the saddle, boots sinking into warm earth. The stranger's eyes met his for a heartbeat, pride and exhaustion mingling in that gaze, before Dawson offered his last water. The man drank, each swallow a defiance against the desert's hunger. No words passed between them, only a slow nod before Dawson mounted again. The sun slipped lower. The air cooled. He rode on, not expecting the desert to remember. Morning came quiet, pale light spilling over the horizon. Dawson stood beside his horse, tightening the cinch, when he heard the approach of hooves. 2 riders emerged from the haze. The man from yesterday led the way, sitting straighter now, strength returned to his shoulders. Beside him rode a young woman. Her braids swung over one shoulder, threaded with beads that caught the morning light like drops of rain. She dismounted with fluid grace, and for a moment Dawson thought of the wind, how it arrives without asking, how it leaves something changed behind. She held a small bundle wrapped in doeskin and sage. Her voice was soft but carried easily, each word deliberate. She told him her name, Peta, and that she had come to thank him for saving her father, Chief Tahoma Skyhawk. Dawson tipped his hat, accepting the bundle without looking too long into her eyes. There was no blush in her cheeks, no coy smile, only sincerity, which struck him deeper than charm ever could. The chief gave a single nod of respect before turning his horse. Peta followed, glancing back once, and that glance stayed with him longer than he cared to admit. Days passed. Dawson rode his grazing lands, checking fence lines, mending where the wind had worked its mischief. One afternoon by the river, he saw her again, kneeling to fill clay jars with water. She lifted her head at the sound of his horse, her expression unreadable, then offered a brief nod before returning to her work. Another time, he found her struggling to free a foal caught in thornbrush. He held the branches aside while she coaxed the little creature free, her hands gentle but firm. She thanked him with roasted maize wrapped in leaves. In return, he told her about the stars and the trails they marked in the sky. It was in these small trades, a meal for a story, a carved wooden hawk for a stitched shirt, that something began to take root. But roots do not grow without pressure from the soil around them. The town was watching. Whispers moved faster than wind, curling through saloon doors and across the porch of the general store. "Comanche girl," they said. "Dangerous ground." Dawson heard it all, though no one said it to his face. His jaw would tighten, his eyes stay fixed ahead, and still he rode the same trails. One evening Marshal Eli Boone caught him outside the livery. "Tensions with the tribe are thin," Boone said, not unkindly. "Don't give folks a reason to talk." The meaning was clear enough. Dawson gave a slow nod, though something in his chest resisted. Resistance turned to surrender the next time he heard her voice. He was riding near the river again, evening settling like a warm blanket, when a song drifted toward him. The notes were low, drawn from the heart, the language unfamiliar yet full of something he understood. He followed the sound to where she stood on the bank, skirt brushing her ankles, hair loose and stirring in the breeze. She didn't startle when he came closer. Instead, she asked if he had ever listened to the river. "It speaks when you are still enough," she said. They talked until the light faded, the world shrinking to water and breath and the quiet thud of his heart. He told himself to turn away, to ride back to the safe distance he'd been keeping. But the river was pulling him, and he was tired of fighting the current. Not everyone shared the peace they found in those moments. Silas Crow, an outlaw with a history Dawson would rather forget, caught sight of them together one afternoon. Silas's mouth curled into a smile that had no warmth. Later, Dawson heard his name drifting through town with the sour twist of rumor, claims of stealing from both sides, of playing the hero for more than just honor. The lies stuck, and they were meant to. It wasn't long before Silas rode into the Comanche camp under the thin veil of trade. His words were oil on dry brush, mocking PETA, baiting Dawson, hoping for a spark. Dawson stepped between them, his size a wall. Silas leaned forward in the saddle, voice low and venomous. "You'll regret mixing your world with hers." Chief Tahoma's voice cut the air, commanding Silas to leave. He did, but not before spitting in the dust. In the days that followed, the wind carried talk of an ambush. Dawson began keeping watch from the ridges, his silhouette etched against moonlight. He told himself it was just to keep the peace, but he knew better. The attack came at dawn. The first shots split the quiet like tearing cloth. Dawson was already in the saddle, riding hard toward the rising smoke. In the camp, chaos swirled, horses screaming, women pulling children to shelter, men firing at shadows between the sage. He saw PETA near the corral, a rifle raised against her. Time slowed. He felt every grain of dust between his teeth, heard the hollow echo of his own heartbeat. Then he was moving, wrenching the weapon from the outlaw's hands, pulling PETA into the saddle before the man could recover. They tore through the canyon, the gang thundering behind them. Bullets whined past, chipping rock, slicing air. Dawson turned in the saddle, fired, and saw Silas's horse stumble, throwing him hard into the dust. They rode until the sounds faded, the canyon walls closing around them like a held breath. When they returned to the camp, bruised and coated in dust, the chief met them at the edge of the fires. He clasped Dawson's arm, and the weight of that gesture settled deep. That night, Dawson found PETA by the river again. The moon cast a silver road across the water. She held the small wooden hawk he'd carved for her weeks ago. "The wind carries the ones it chooses," she said, voice low, "and it carried you to me." Her hand found his, and for the first time, he didn't let go. The wedding came with the blessing of her father. Beneath a sky littered with stars, 2 fires were lit, one for the cowboy, one for the Comanche. They burned alone for a moment, then were joined into one flame. The air smelled of cedar smoke and sage, the drums a slow heartbeat under the night. Years later, Dawson would still remember the thirst in the chief's eyes that first day, the last swallow of water from his canteen. He would remember the wind, and how it brought PETA into his life like a seed carried to the one patch of soil where it could grow. And if you asked him what the desert gives, he might smile a little, as if holding back a secret, and say, "Sometimes the smallest kindness becomes the story of a lifetime."